April 30th, 1943. Dawn breaks cold over the Spanish coast near Huelva, where the Atlantic meets the Mediterranean in restless gray water. At approximately 9:30 in the morning, fisherman José Antonio Rey Maria pulls his nets through the surf near Punta Umbria and finds something that doesn't belong in these waters. A body, face down, drifting with the tide. The man wears a British officer's uniform, waterlogged and heavy. A life jacket keeps him afloat. Chained to his wrist is a black leather briefcase, locked, official, impossible to ignore. Rey Maria's hands shake as he drags the corpse aboard. He doesn't know it yet, but this dead man, bobbing in the surf with documents pressed against his chest, is about to redirect entire German armies. This corpse will save thousands of lives. And everything about him, his name, his rank, his tragic death, is a lie. May 13th, 1943. Tunisia. The Axis forces in North Africa surrender unconditionally. Over 267,000 German and Italian soldiers become prisoners of war. The Desert War, 2 years of brutal push and counterpunch across Libya and Egypt, is finally over. During the entire North African campaign, the Germans and Italians suffer 620,000 casualties, while the British Commonwealth loses 220,000 men. American casualties in Tunisia alone exceed 18,500. The scale of the defeat stuns Berlin. Hitler has gambled heavily and lost catastrophically. Now the Allies stand victorious on African shores, controlling the entire southern rim of the Mediterranean. Supply lines to Asia reopen. The threat to Middle Eastern oil vanishes. But victory creates a new problem. What comes next? The Americans want a direct cross-channel assault into France, Operation Sledgehammer, then Roundup, ultimately to become Overlord. General George Marshall, U.S. Army Chief of Staff, argues for concentration of force, for striking at the German heartland through France. To Marshall and the American military planners, the Mediterranean represents distraction, delay, and dispersion of resources needed for the decisive blow. But in January 1943, at Casablanca, Morocco, Allied leaders decide to use their massive military resources in the Mediterranean to launch an invasion of Italy, which British Prime Minister Winston Churchill calls the soft underbelly of Europe. Churchill's phrase, though he may have said soft belly, captures his strategic vision. Italy can be knocked out of the war. German divisions can be drawn away from the Russian front, answering Soviet demands for Allied action. Mediterranean sea lanes, closed to Allied shipping since 1941, can be secured. And perhaps, just perhaps, the British can maintain their imperial position in the region. But Sicily is the obvious target. Too obvious. The island sits like a stepping stone between North Africa and Italy. Only a narrow strait separates Sicily from the Italian mainland. Any child with a map could deduce the Allied plan. And German intelligence is no child. Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, is scheduled for early July 1943. The problem is simple and severe. If the Germans expect Sicily, they will fortify Sicily. They will mass forces, prepare defenses, lay minefields, position their best divisions exactly where Allied troops will land. The butcher's bill will be catastrophic. This is where deception becomes not merely helpful but essential to survival. Somewhere in London, in the labyrinth of British intelligence services, a solution is being crafted, one so audacious, so elaborate, and so macabre that it will require a corpse, forged documents, and a conspiracy spanning months. The roots reach back to 1939, before the war truly began. Admiral John Godfrey, Director of Naval Intelligence, with his assistant Ian Fleming, who would later create James Bond, had circulated what became known as the Trout Memo. This document catalogued various schemes for deceiving the enemy, including one particularly morbid suggestion: use a corpse carrying false papers to plant misleading information. The idea was filed away, theoretical and grim, waiting for the right moment. By 1943, that moment has arrived. The man charged with solving this impossible problem is not a soldier. Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague, born March 29, 1901, is a peacetime barrister, a King's Counsel, who traded his courtroom wig for naval intelligence. His family is Jewish, prominent in banking and politics. His father, Louis Montague, is the second Baron Swaithling. Ewan himself is educated at Westminster School, Trinity College, Cambridge, and Harvard University. Called to the bar in 1924, he made King's Counsel in 1939, the same year Britain goes to war. A keen yachtsman, Montague enlisted in the Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve in 1938. His legal mind proves more valuable than seamanship. By 1941, he is posted to the Naval Intelligence Division at the Admiralty, running NID-17M, the highly secret branch handling counter-espionage. He becomes the naval representative on the 20 Committee, the inter-service group overseeing Britain's network of double agents. The 20 Committee, its name a visual pun on the Roman numeral XX, double cross, represents one of Britain's most closely guarded secrets. Nearly every German agent in Britain has been turned, captured, or executed. Montague's partner in deception is Flight Lieutenant Charles Cholmondeley, born January 27, 1917 in O'Halloran Hill, South Australia. Cholmondeley, pronounced Chumley in the British fashion, is an eccentric figure even in the strange world of intelligence work. Tall, myopic, with such poor eyesight that despite joining the RAF, he was never allowed to fly a plane. He serves as secretary to the 20 Committee after being seconded from the RAF to MI5, Britain's domestic counterintelligence service. In November 1942, Cholmondeley proposes a variation on the Trout Memo, code-named Operation Trojan Horse. The plan: obtain a body from a London hospital, fill the lungs with water, place documents in an inside pocket, then drop it from a coastal command aircraft. The supposition would be that an Allied aircraft crashed and this passenger drowned with secret papers intact. The 20 Committee rejects the plan as unworkable. Too many variables. Too much could go wrong with an airdrop. But the core concept, a corpse carrying false intelligence, lingers like smoke. By January 1943, circumstances have changed. Sicily looms. The need is desperate. On February 4, 1943, Montague and Cholmondeley file a revised plan with the 20 Committee. Not an aircraft drop, but a submarine delivery to neutral Spain. The documents will not hint at invasion plans. They will be official correspondence between senior officers, intimate and authentic. Spain, technically neutral, maintains pro-German factions within its government and military. The Abwehr, German military intelligence, operates between February and April 1943. The clock ticks. Montague and Cholmondeley must create not just a plan but a complete human being, a man with a past, a personality, relationships, debts, hopes. They must craft a legend so convincing that even the paranoid German intelligence apparatus will believe it. And they must do all this while procuring something extraordinarily difficult in wartime London, a fresh corpse whose death can be concealed, whose family won't object, and whose body can pass for a drowning victim after weeks of decay. The invasion is scheduled for early July. That gives them roughly 4 months to execute the most audacious lie in military history. A lie that begins with the discovery of a body in Spain and ends, if successful, with German divisions standing watch on the wrong beaches while Allied soldiers storm ashore unopposed. On January 24, 1943, a 34-year-old Welsh homeless man named WW2 Michael is found seriously ill in an abandoned warehouse near King's Cross Station in London. He had ingested rat poison containing phosphorus, Battle's vermin killer, a paste smeared on bread crusts. Whether suicide or a desperate mistake by a starving man, the result is the same. 2 days later, Michael dies at St. Pancras Hospital at age 36. His father had committed suicide when he was young. His mother died when he was 31. No family. No friends. No one to claim him. On January 28, 1943, Coroner Bentley Purchase contacts Montague with news. He has located a suitable body. Purchase had been asked by British intelligence to watch for exactly this, a male corpse with no next of kin. Montague consults the renowned pathologist Sir Bernard Spilsbury to determine what kind of body they need and what factors would fool a Spanish pathologist. Spilsbury advises that Spaniards, as Roman Catholics, are averse to postmortems unless the cause of death is of great importance. The body is far from perfect. When Montague expresses concern that the undernourished corpse doesn't look like a fit field officer, Purchase replies, he does not have to look like an officer, only a staff officer, more accustomed to office work. The phosphorus poisoning has yellowed the skin slightly, but Purchase assures them the small amount of poison would not be identified in a body supposedly floating in the sea for several days. Purchase warns that the body must be used within 3 months, after which it would decompose past the point of usefulness. He stores it at precisely 4 degrees Celsius. Any colder and the flesh would freeze, revealing the deception once thawed. Now comes the delicate work of creating a man from a corpse. GLYNDWR Michael must become Major William Martin, Royal Marines. The team invents a complete life. Born March 29, 1907, son of John GLYNDWR Martin and the late Antonia Martin of Cardiff, Wales. They craft what Montagu calls pocket litter, the mundane debris that fills every person's pockets and wallet. Theater ticket stubs from a recent show. A receipt for an engagement ring purchased at a London jeweler. Keys. Cigarettes. Matches. Postage stamps. An angry letter from Lloyd's Bank about an overdraft of £79. A tailor's bill demanding payment. Most importantly, letters. One from Pam, Martin's fictional fiancée, written on pink notepaper with affectionate intimacy. Another from his father, mentioning family matters and asking when William will visit. A photograph of Pam, actually Jean Leslie, an MI5 clerk who volunteers her image. Someone at Naval Intelligence even wears Martin's uniform and underwear for days, giving the clothes that lived-in authenticity that new fabric lacks. The psychological realism must be flawless. German intelligence officers are trained to spot forgeries, trained to be suspicious. Every detail must ring true not just to casual inspection but to hostile scrutiny by professionals whose lives depend on catching lies. The personal effects establish identity. But the operation's real payload is correspondence, official letters between senior Allied officers that will, if believed, redirect German strategic planning. Two documents form the heart of the deception. The first is a personal letter from Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye, Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, to General Sir Harold Alexander, Commander-in-Chief Middle East Command. The letter begins, "My dear Alex," the studied casualness of men who know each other well, who correspond not as bureaucrats but as colleagues. The tone is conversational, almost gossipy. Nye mentions strategic matters obliquely, referring to operations by code name rather than objective. He discusses personnel assignments, mentions mutual acquaintances, complains about Washington politics. Embedded within this seemingly routine correspondence are lethal lies. Nye references Operation Husky, but places it in Greece, not Sicily. He mentions Operation Brimstone, a fictional assault on Sardinia, as if it were the main effort requiring reinforcement. Sicily is mentioned only as a feint, a diversionary attack to mask the real objectives. The letter's genius lies in what it doesn't say directly. The deception operates through implication, through the assumptions a reader makes when intercepting private correspondence never meant for their eyes. A second letter, from Lord Louis Mountbatten to Admiral of the Fleet Sir Andrew Cunningham, reinforces the fiction. Mountbatten introduces Major Martin as a specialist in combined operations, someone whose expertise will be valuable in the Mediterranean. The letter creates professional context, establishes Martin's bona fides within the military hierarchy. Both letters are typed on proper official stationery with correct letterheads, signed by the actual generals. The signatures are genuine. Nye and Mountbatten signed the forgeries themselves after being briefed on the operation's purpose. Even the paper stock, ink, and typing fonts match standard military correspondence. Nothing is left to chance. Nothing invites suspicion. Spain in 1943 occupies a precarious neutrality. Generalissimo Francisco Franco owes his victory in the Spanish Civil War partly to German and Italian support. His Falangist regime sympathizes ideologically with fascism. German intelligence operates openly in Spanish cities, maintaining networks of agents under diplomatic cover. Yet Spain also fears provoking Britain, particularly the Royal Navy, which could blockade Spanish ports and starve the country. Huelva is chosen for several reasons. Local currents are strong enough to push a body close to shore without requiring submarine crews to risk discovery in shallow water. The town hosts a German consulate staffed with a competent vice-consul and an aware officer operating under diplomatic cover. Local Spanish military officers are known to be pro-German and would likely share any important papers with their ideological allies. The British consul in Huelva is deemed reliable and capable of handling his role in the deception. Finally, the mincemeat team hopes the local coroner would not be as sophisticated. On April 17, 1943, in the early hours, Montagu and Chumley arrive at a London morgue to prepare the body. There is one final crisis. The feet have frozen solid. An electric heater is located and the feet defrosted just enough to force the boots on. The pocket litter is distributed carefully. Wallet, letters, keys, receipts. The briefcase is chained to the wrist. The body is sealed inside a cylindrical steel canister marked "Handle with care, optical instruments," filled with 21 pounds of dry ice. As the dry ice sublimates, it fills the container with carbon dioxide, driving out oxygen and preserving the corpse without refrigeration. The canister is loaded into a 1937 Fordson van driven by St. John Jock Horsfall, an MI5 driver who had been a racing champion before the war. Montague and Chumley ride in the back, guarding their macabre cargo through the night as the van drives north to Greenock in western Scotland. There, HMS Seraph waits, a British S-class submarine under the command of Lieutenant Norman "Bill" Jewell. Born October 24, 1913, in the Seychelles, Jewell took command of HMS Seraph in February 1942. He is described by fellow officers as the epitome of what a submarine captain should be: fearless, cool, calculating. Seraph is already legendary for special operations. She has evacuated French General Giroux from occupied France, landed American General Mark Clark for secret negotiations in Algeria, conducted reconnaissance missions deep in enemy waters. Under Jewell's command, Seraph has sunk 7,000 tons of enemy shipping and damaged another 10,000. The canister is loaded aboard. The crew jokes about John Brown's body and our new shipmate Charlie. They have no idea what the container actually holds. Seraph departs Scotland, navigates through the Bay of Biscay, passes Gibraltar, and approaches the Spanish coast near Huelva. At 4:15 a.m. on April 30, 1943, after spending the day reconnoitering the coastline, Seraph surfaces. Jewell orders all crew below except his officers. The canister is brought on deck and opened. The body, stiff, preserved, dressed in its Royal Marine uniform, is lowered into the dark water approximately 1,600 yards from shore. Jewell, who has never performed a burial at sea, reads Psalm 39, "I will keep my mouth with a bridle, while the wicked is before me." He orders the engines full astern. The propeller wash pushes the corpse toward the Spanish coast. Jewell then radios a single message: "Mincemeat completed." The submarine turns for Gibraltar. Behind them, in the gray pre-dawn light, Major William Martin drifts toward his appointment with history. German intelligence in 1943 is sophisticated, paranoid, and desperately aware that deception is the Allies' stock in trade. The Abwehr knows British intelligence runs elaborate double-agent networks. They suspect, correctly, that many of their agents in Britain have been compromised. They are trained to look for lies, to question documents, to probe for inconsistencies. But this sophistication becomes a weakness. The Germans expect elaborate deception precisely because they know the British are capable of it. They mirror image their own thinking onto the enemy. If we would deceive, they must be deceiving. When they discover Major Martin's body, they face a paradox. The documents seem too good to be true, and therefore might be false. Yet the documents also seem too authentic, too detailed, too mundane to be fabricated, and therefore might be real. The genius of Operation Mincemeat lies in exploiting this psychological trap. Every element of the deception is designed to pass hostile scrutiny precisely because it is real in substance if not in content. The letters are genuinely signed by actual generals. The paper is authentic military stationery. The typing matches standard formats. The tone reflects how senior officers actually communicate. Even the pocket litter, theater stubs, bank overdrafts, love letters, carries the messy authenticity of real life. No forger would include an overdraft notice. No intelligence service would stage such elaborate trivia unless it were true. The Germans believe because they want to believe, because the evidence confirms their expectations, and because the alternative, that the British would go to such lengths for deception, seems simultaneously too clever and too crude to be true. Before sealing the letters, Montague places a single black eyelash inside one envelope fold. It is a simple, elegant trap. If the documents are returned unopened, the eyelash will remain. If the Spanish or Germans open the letters, the eyelash will be lost or displaced. But Montague goes further. Each letter is folded symmetrically just once while dry, creating a sharp crease. A letter folded again while wet, as it would be if extracted, photographed, and replaced, creates a softer, irregular secondary crease visible under microscopic examination. The British also watch for changes in the wax seals, for any disturbance in the paper fibers. When the briefcase is returned to British officials in mid-May, forensic examination begins immediately. The eyelash is missing. Microscopic analysis reveals the letters were folded twice, once symmetrically when dry, once irregularly when wet. The Spanish had rolled the damp letters around a thin probe, extracted them through the envelope opening without breaking the wax seal, photographed them, then re-soaked and reinserted them. Sophisticated work. Professional work. Exactly what Montague hoped would happen. More importantly, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park, operating the Ultra program that had cracked German Enigma communications, begin intercepting messages. Intelligence officers send a triumphant telegram to Churchill: "Mincemeat swallowed rod, line, and sinker by the right people, and from the best information they look like acting on it." The Germans believe. Hitler believes. And the machinery of strategic redeployment begins to turn. The body reaches shore on April 30th. The Spanish authorities conduct an autopsy the following day. British Vice Consul Francis Haselden attends, watching carefully, saying little. The coroner determines death by drowning. The body is prepared for burial with full military honors. But before Major William Martin is laid to rest in the San Marco Cemetery in Huelva, the briefcase and its contents begin their journey through Spanish bureaucracy. As Montague and Cholmondeley had anticipated, pro-German elements within the Spanish military take notice. Colonel José López Baron Cerruti, head of Spain's secret police, assists in giving the Germans access to the documents. The papers are carefully extracted, photographed, then replaced. The Spanish attempt to cover their tracks, but British intelligence, watching through ultra-decrypts and through informants in Spain, the verdict: authentic. On May 14, 1943, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz meets with Adolf Hitler to discuss his recent visit to Italy, his meeting with Benito Mussolini, and the progress of the war. Donitz refers to the mincemeat documents as the Anglo-Saxon order and records Hitler's reaction. The Führer does not agree with Mussolini that the most likely invasion point is Sicily. Furthermore, he believes that the discovered Anglo-Saxon order confirms the assumption that the planned attacks will be directed mainly against Sardinia and the Peloponnesus. Hitler's existing paranoia about the Balkans, Germany's source of raw materials including copper, bauxite, chrome, and oil, makes him receptive to the deception. The Allies are pushing at an open door in Hitler's mind. He had long believed that an attack would come through Greece and the Balkans. The documents do not plant a new fear, they confirm an existing one. Mussolini, who suspects Sicily is the real target, is overruled and pushed aside. Hitler orders that Greece, Sardinia, and Corsica must be defended at all costs. The German military machine begins its fatal reorientation. Hitler orders the 1st Panzer Division moved from France to Greece, along with 7 infantry divisions from Italy, and an additional 10 infantry divisions from Italy to the Balkans. An 18,000-strong Panzer Division transfers from France to Thessaloniki. Sardinia's garrison is doubled. Aircraft and naval elements flow toward the supposed invasion targets. Torpedo boats are switched from Sicily to reinforce other positions. Among the Nazi high command, skeptics exist. Joseph Goebbels quietly confides his doubts to his diary but keeps his thoughts to himself publicly. Baron Alexis von Wren, Hitler's intelligence advisor, himself a secret anti-Nazi who will later be executed for his role in the July 1944 plot against Hitler, assures the Führer of the document's authenticity. Whether von Wren believes it or deliberately misleads Hitler remains unclear. In London, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park intercept German communications, confirming the deception's success. The message is clear: Berlin believes. The strategic redeployment is happening. Divisions that should be defending Sicily are marching toward Greece and Sardinia. The telegram goes to Churchill, still in Washington for the Trident Conference planning the invasion: "Mincemeat swallowed rod, line, and sinker by the right people, and from the best information they look like acting on it." On the night of July 9th to 10th, 1943, Operation Husky begins. More than 3,000 ships carry over 150,000 troops toward Sicily's southern beaches, covered by more than 4,000 aircraft. It is the largest amphibious operation in history to this point, a title it will hold until D-Day 11 months later. The American 7th Army under Lieutenant General George S. Patton lands at 3 points: Skogliti, Gela, and Licata. The British 8th Army under General Bernard Montgomery assaults the southeastern coast near Syracuse. A summer storm scatters the airborne forces. Paratroopers land miles from their objectives. Gliders crash into the sea. The weather is so severe that Axis commanders convince themselves no sane military would launch an invasion in such conditions. It provides perfect cover for surprise. But the critical detail, the detail that determines whether this invasion becomes a bloodbath or a breakthrough, is what waits on the island. They are opposed on the island by only 2 German divisions, as Nazi leadership continued to believe the main assault would come at Sardinia and Corsica. 2 German divisions. Not the 6 or 8 that intelligence predicted. Not the massed armor and fortified positions that could turn the beaches into killing grounds. The Allies expected to lose 10,000 killed and wounded in the first week alone. Instead, the beaches are taken with manageable casualties. The Italian coastal battalions, undermanned, under-equipped, demoralized, collapse under the assault. The 2 German divisions present, the 15th Panzergrenadier Division and the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, fight with characteristic German tenacity but are overwhelmed by numbers, naval gunfire, and air supremacy. Hitler, even as Allied forces pour ashore, continues to believe Sicily is a feint. He expects the real invasion to strike Greece or Sardinia at any moment. Days into the invasion, German High Command still treats Sicily as a diversionary operation. Reinforcements that could stabilize the defense remain positioned hundreds of miles away, guarding beaches where no Allied soldier will ever land. Syracuse falls on July 12. Patton drives west, taking Palermo on July 22. Montgomery grinds north along the eastern coast against stiffening German resistance. The campaign becomes a race to Messina, the northeastern port through which the Axis can evacuate to mainland Italy. German commanders, recognizing the island is lost, organize a masterful withdrawal. Between August 11 and August 17, they evacuate approximately 100,000 troops across the narrow straits to the Italian mainland, troops who will fight again in the brutal Italian campaign to come. On August 17, 1943, Allied forces enter Messina. In 38 days, Sicily is liberated. The campaign that military planners feared would cost tens of thousands of lives in the opening days ends with approximately 24,850 Allied casualties total, including 9,700 Americans, 2,400 Canadians, and nearly 11,000 British. Axis losses are catastrophic, approximately 165,000 casualties, including 29,000 killed or wounded and 135,000 captured, the vast majority Italian. The strategic victory is even more significant than the tactical one. The Mediterranean sea lanes reopen to Allied shipping. Malta's siege ends permanently. The threat to North African bases evaporates. Most importantly, Italy, the first of the Axis powers, teeters on the brink of collapse. On July 24 to 25, 1943, during the Sicilian fighting, the fascist Grand Council meets in Rome and votes Mussolini out of power. Il Duce, the strongman who marched on Rome in 1922, who built a modern Roman Empire, who promised to restore Italian greatness, is arrested. King Victor Emmanuel III appoints Marshal Pietro Badoglio to form a new government. Secret negotiations for an armistice begin almost immediately. The man who orchestrated this strategic miracle, Ewan Montagu, receives confirmation of success through ultra-intercepts but cannot tell anyone outside the intelligence community. The secret must be preserved. German intelligence must never know they were deceived. The techniques and methods must remain classified for future operations. Even after the war ends, the full story of Operation Mincemeat will remain classified for years. But Montagu knows. In his office at the Admiralty, reading the intercepts confirming German belief, watching casualty figures come in far below projections, he understands what has been achieved. 1 corpse. 2 intelligence. On July 25, 1943, while fighting still rages in Sicily, the fascist Grand Council meets in Rome and votes Benito Mussolini out of power. King Victor Emmanuel III orders Il Duce's arrest. The man who promised to restore the Roman Empire, who marched on Rome in 1922, who dragged Italy into war alongside Hitler, is deposed and imprisoned. Marshal Pietro Badoglio forms a new government and immediately begins secret armistice negotiations with the Allies. On September 3, 1943, General Giuseppe Castellano signs the Armistice of Cassibile on behalf of Italy at a ceremony near Syracuse, Sicily. The terms are unconditional surrender. The armistice calls for immediate cessation of hostilities by Italian armed forces, refusal to cooperate with German troops, and free use by the Allies of any strategic locations and equipment. On September 8, the armistice is publicly announced by General Eisenhower and Marshal Badoglio. Italy, one of the 3 founding Axis powers, exits the war. The German response is swift and brutal. Hitler had long anticipated Italian betrayal. German forces immediately invade northern and central Italy, committing atrocities against Italian civilians and army units who opposed the occupation. Mussolini, rescued by German paratroopers in a daring raid, is installed as puppet leader of the Italian Social Republic in the north. The Italian Royal Army and Air Force virtually disintegrate with the armistice announcement. Some Italian units fight alongside the Germans. Others join the Allies or partisan resistance. Many simply dissolve, soldiers returning home to avoid capture by either side. But for Germany, the Italian collapse represents strategic disaster. The campaign diverts roughly 20 German divisions from potential reinforcement of Normandy or the Eastern Front. 20 divisions, approximately one-fifth of Germany's entire military strength, tied down in Italy's mountains and valleys. These are not second-rate occupation troops but combat divisions desperately needed elsewhere. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet summer offensive is grinding German armies into dust. In the Atlantic, U-boat losses mount catastrophically. Germany cannot afford to lose 20 divisions defending terrain that, before Operation Mincemeat succeeded, might never have become a battlefield. The Mediterranean reopens to Allied shipping. Convoys no longer must sail around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, saving weeks of transit time and thousands of tons of fuel. Malta, besieged for years, bombed into rubble, barely surviving, is finally secure. Allied air forces establish bases in southern Italy, bringing targets across southern Europe within bomber range. Most critically, the road to Rome, and eventually to Germany itself, lies open. The Italian campaign will become a brutal, grinding affair as German forces establish defensive lines across the peninsula's mountains. Monte Cassino, Anzio, the Gothic Line, battles that will cost tens of thousands of lives. But these battles happen at all only because Operation Mincemeat succeeded in placing Allied forces on Italian soil with manageable casualties. Historian Sir Michael Howard, in the official British History of Strategic Deception, later writes that Operation Mincemeat was perhaps the most successful single deception operation of the entire war. The claim is difficult to dispute. One corpse, one briefcase, two intelligence officers working from offices in London, and the course of World War II shifts perceptibly toward Allied victory. 4 years after the war, Operation Mincemeat remains one of Britain's most closely guarded secrets. The operational techniques, the double-agent networks, the signals intelligence that confirmed the deception's success, all must be protected for potential future use. Even the identity of the corpse remains classified, hidden behind official secrecy. Then, in 1950, novelist Duff Cooper, a former cabinet minister who had been briefed on the operation in March 1943, publishes Operation Heartbreak, a spy novel whose plot device involves a corpse with papers naming him William Martin being floated off the Spanish coast. The book hits too close to truth. Sharp-eyed journalist Ian Cole then investigates, connecting Cooper's fiction to a footnote in a book by General Westphal, formerly Field Marshal Kesselring's chief of staff in Italy. The British security services decide the best response is to publish the real story. Over a single weekend, Montagu writes The Man Who Never Was. Published in 1953, the book sells 2 million copies and becomes an international sensation. In 1956, the book is adapted into a film directed by Ronald Neame, with Clifton Webb playing Montagu. The screenplay by Nigel Balchin wins the BAFTA Award for Best British Screenplay. Yet even in revealing the story, Montagu must maintain certain deceptions. He is careful not to mention the role played by signals intelligence, the ultra-decrypts that confirmed German belief. The extent of Britain's double-cross system remains classified. And most critically, GLYNDWR Michael's identity stays hidden. The book refers to him only as a man who had recently died. Montagu keeps his promise to never reveal the real name. In 1996, amateur historian Roger Morgan uncovers documents in the Public Record Office that identify the body as GLYNDWR Michael. In 1998, after the British government confirms Michael's identity, a new inscription is added to the gravestone in Huelva. GLYNDWR Michael served as Major William Martin, RM. The homeless Welsh drifter, dead at 36 from rat poison, receives belated recognition for his unknowing service. The grave in San Marcos section of Nuestra Señora de la Soledad Cemetery remains well maintained, visited by military historians, intelligence professionals, and tourists who understand what happened there. The original inscription still reads its carefully crafted fiction, William Martin, born March 29, 1907, died April 24, 1943, beloved son of John WW2 Martin and the late Antonia Martin of Cardiff, Wales. Below it, the Latin inscription, Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. For Montagu, the operation represents the pinnacle of his intelligence career. He receives the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for his wartime service, returns to his legal practice, eventually becomes a judge. He dies on July 19, 1985, in London, having witnessed his macabre masterpiece become one of the most studied deception operations in military history. The legacy of Operation Mincemeat extends far beyond 1943. The operation becomes a textbook case study in military deception, psychological warfare, and the exploitation of enemy assumptions. During the Cold War, intelligence services on both sides study Montagu's methods. Modern information warfare, the manipulation of perception, the crafting of believable narratives, the exploitation of confirmation bias, owes intellectual debt to the principles demonstrated in Operation Mincemeat. For Montagu personally, there was particular satisfaction in the operation's target. The operation also raises enduring ethical questions about the use of human remains for military purposes. GLYNDWR Michael never consented to his body's use. His family, absent, distant, or deceased, never knew. Yet his unwitting service saved thousands of lives. The moral calculus remains complex, debated by ethicists and historians even today. War is fought with guns and ships and aircraft, with divisions and fleets and air wings maneuvering across continents and oceans. But sometimes, in rare, remarkable moments, war is won with nothing more than imagination, patience, and the willingness to exploit human psychology at its deepest levels. Operation Mincemeat succeeded not because of superior technology or overwhelming force, but because two intelligence officers understood something fundamental about their enemy, that the most believable lie is one wrapped in uncomfortable truth. The overdraft notices, the love letters, the theater stubs, these mundane details made Major William Martin real in ways that no elaborate fabrication could achieve. The Germans believed because the evidence before them demanded belief, because skepticism required more imagination than acceptance. One corpse. One briefcase. Documents that traveled from a London office to a Spanish beach to Hitler's desk in Berlin. And because of this chain of carefully orchestrated deception, thousands of young men, American, British, Canadian, stormed ashore on Sicily's beaches and lived to see another day. Divisions that might have slaughtered them stood instead on Greek beaches, watching empty horizons for an invasion that would never come. In the end, Operation Mincemeat reminds us that warfare extends beyond the battlefield, that victory belongs not always to the strongest but sometimes to the cleverest, and that the dead, even the forgotten,